Hi, everyone. It's Brendan from the Progress Pondcast. You know, it takes a lot to put out our program. It's up to 4 hours of editing on my end just to get it out in a timely fashion, and we could really use your support. The best way to do that is to find us on Patreon at www.patreon.com Progress Pondcast. Don't forget that letter N in pond. You can set up a monthly subscription for as little as $5 a month. We really appreciate you listeners. Thanks for helping keep us afloat. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Progress Podcast. This is our 17th episode, and I think our final episode before the election, which is coming up in just a few days. It's been a hectic few weeks for us, and I'm sure it's been hectic for you. My name is Brendan Squire, and Marty Longman's on the other mic. We got a lot to take care of, so let's jump right into it. Marty, how you been?
I'm doing all right. I'm still smarting from the Yankees losing the World Series, but I know that virtually no one has any sympathy for me.
No, nobody has any sympathy for you or the Yankees. Sorry,
None,
pal. I had
none.
sympathy when the Giants lost to the Eagles a couple weeks ago, but but no sympathy for the Yanks.
Yeah, it's been rough, but I did enjoy getting to watch the World Series with a team in it that I cared about for first time in 15 years. So that was
Yeah,
nice.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So as we're gonna get up to the election a little bit later in the podcast, but right now I've just got a big smile on my face, and I'll bet you know why.
Oh, I know why. I know. I mean, there's probably at least two prior Bondcasts that we did where you were openly hoping, praying, envisioning Rudy Giuliani living in a cardboard box. And I don't know. I Today might be the day. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. It was only a couple of weeks ago that Rudy was ordered to turn over a whole list of his personal possessions, many of them worth quite a lot of money, to the two women he defamed in that Georgia election case. And he has been fighting and fighting. He doesn't want to pay Ruby Freeman or Wandrea Moss anything at all. He's been fighting it and putting it off. And finally, he lost. And the day of reckoning finally came for him. I believe that was filed on October 22nd, the day after my birthday. Belated
Nice.
birthday present for me. My cat is jumping up on the table. Um,
It's excited. It's excited. Your cat's excited.
the cat is absolutely, the cat is delighted as well. He's as happy as I am.
Yeah.
So on October 22nd, of 2024, United States District Court from the Southern District put out an order telling Rudy what had to go into receivership. We're going to go over that list in a second, but I do want to add that I was looking at the news today, and just a few hours before we started this podcast, the Independent out of Britain had an article up that said Rudy Giuliani isn't ready to hand over his New York City apartment as he tries to stall bankruptcy order, and another one saying that the news item saying a moving van, the moving company is expected at his house. After moving company expected at Julie's New York City appointment after missed deadline.
Oh no. They're out there on the curb.
Oh my God, they're waiting for him. He might end up in a box. He might end up in
Uh,
that box after all. And I've said it
uh,
before. I would prefer the box to prison in some ways because in prison he's guaranteed three hots and a cot,
yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
this guy is such a piece of shit. So shall we go over the list?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
All
do it
right.
for sure.
I'm not gonna
What's Rudy coughing up?
All right. So here's what Rudy is coughing up. It is hereby ordered, blah, 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 blah. Receivership property. The receivership property shall include the shares evidencing defendant's interest in 45 East 66th Street, owners corporation, appurtenant to the apartment located at 45 East 66th, apartment 10W, New York, and any proprietary lease and other document entitling him to ownership and possession of such an apartment. And if you've seen any pictures of Rudy's New York City apartment, that is a palace. That place is worth. I'm not going to take the time to look it up, but I know it's worth a few million.
Yeah, it's probably it's not worth what he was asking for it though, because he couldn't sell it.
Yeah, he couldn't sell it.
Yeah,
He is also ordered to turn over fees owed to him by President Trump by Trump and the RNC.
yeah. I gotta pause here for a second
Yeah,
because this is
please
this
do.
is this is like the funniest thing
It's
because
so funny.
Trump had him go out there with the shoe polish running down his face at the wrong Four Seasons. He's at Four Seasons.
The one a few blocks from where my dad lives.
Yeah, the landscaping place, not the hotel. He's got Rudy out there running all across the country, committing crimes, committing fraud, getting himself disbarred. And he's doing all this stuff for Trump. And Trump just refuses to pay him.
He stiffed him.
Yeah, stiffs him for all that work. So then when he goes into court, they're like, well, what are you worth? And he's like, well, the former president of the United States owes me like 3 million bucks. So now the judge is like, yeah, those two Georgia election workers that were defamed by Rudy, they now can try to collect from Trump.
Yep. It's so funny. He's never going to see that money. So
He's not. Maybe they will.
maybe
Yeah.
they
Trump might
might.
have to cough it up.
I know that'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
Continuing, he also has to turn over the non-exempt cash in two Citibank accounts. He has to turn over a Mercedes-Benz Model SL 500, model year 1980. I believe that one was owned by Lauren Bacall.
Yeah. That's the
Various items of furniture, television, sports memorabilia, signed Reggie Jackson picture, signed Yankee Stadium picture, signed Joe DiMaggio shirt.
ooh, that one hurts. That one hurts.
That one stings.
That stings.
Costume jewelry, diamond ring, two Belova watches, five Shinola watches, one Tiffany and Co. watch, one Seiko watch, one Frank Muller watch, one Graham watch, one Corium watch. This man liked his watches.
Yeah, right.
One Rolex watch, two IWC watches, one Invicta watch, two Breitling watches, one Raymond Weil watch, one Bauman Mercer watch, six additional watches. I'm
Whoa.
assuming all of those are very fancy watches. And any additional property as may be ordered by the court upon motion of the receivers or the defendant. He also had to give up, I think he did have to give up the condos, but like there's the the plaintiffs want the court to make them the receivers of his Palm Beach condo, but there is some delay in that. There's some holdup on that one. He did not. There's also a holdup on a bunch of World Series baseballs that apparently his equally shitty son Andrew may have a claim to. So those might not be Rudy's after all. But my favorite part of this whole sordid story and the receivership is a poignant little note that I'm looking for in the order. I want to say it's page 7. So
This is where the judge explains like how sad it is that this is all happening.
yeah, he explains how it's so sad. Yeah, it's where
You
is
you used to be you could have been a contender.
it?
You could have been somebody.
Sorry.
Oh, poor
Here we
Rudy,
go. Here we go.
America's
So
mayor.
there's this particular note of only one piece of property really comes up for any discussion or extended discussion. Everything else is just a list. They don't even mention it in the argument, really, other than describing the things that need to be turned over, the various brands and stuff. The only asset, I'm quoting here, the only asset that defendant seeks to protect from sale that comes close to being exempt under Article 52 is defendant's grandfather's watch. The watch may be distinctive as an item of sentimental value, but it is not distinctive to the law. It would be exempt if defendant proved that the total value of the watch did not exceed $1,000. He has not done so. However painful the circumstances, a party cannot claim that every family or heirloom should be exempt from the procedures of Article 52. If such claims were allowed outside of these exemptions, judgment enforcement would become ineffective as to significant stores of intergenerational wealth like jewelry and real property. The watch, therefore, must be turned over.
That's sad. That is
And
sad.
I'm just imagine Rudy, like, that's the one to the Joe DiMaggio thing I think hurt, but I think that the watch,
Yeah.
Grandpa's watch, really, that one stung,
Yeah. Especially considering who he has to turn it over to.
especially considering who he has to turn it over to.
Yeah.
But it, like, I mean, you know, I remember both of my grandfathers. And if you're like me, and I know I am, my memories of all my grandparents are very like tender and loving. These were people that, loved me unconditionally, right? And I
Sure.
love them back unconditionally. I can't think of a bad thought about any of my grandparents if I really think about it, you feel all warm and tingly. You feel, when I think about my grandparents, I almost feel like a little kid again. And for the fact that he begged for that, it's clear that he begged to keep that watch.
Sure.
He begged to keep that. And like, nah,
Nah.
nope.
No. You owe these people a freaking $1 billion. You're coughing up everything.
Yep. You're
You know,
coughing up everything, dude.
it's not even beginning to cover what he owes them.
And he's
You
and
know.
like he's a shitty person too. Yeah, I mean, what was he saying about Haitians?
Well,
Wasn't he
see,
just
this
like
is this
ranting
is what
about them
this is what I'm
recently?
saying. This is what I'm saying about the pain being greater because of who he's turning it over to. Because he's turning it over to two black women, right?
Yep.
And you know what he. All right, so he was doing a podcast. This is only a couple days ago, and he's doing a podcast, and he's going back over that whole thing about the Haitians in Ohio and how Trump said in the debate they were eating people's pets,
Ugh.
right? You remember that? And
Yes.
he's saying, well, I got a lot of experience with Haitians, and they practice voodoo and they sacrifice animals, and who knows, it's not such a crazy thing. Um, but then he goes and he says, it's not their fault that they, I don't know, sacrifice animals. This is a quote. It's not their fault. They lived back 200 years ago. All right, that doesn't even make sense. People don't live back 200 years ago, but he's saying it's not their fault. They lived back 200 years ago. They just shouldn't have been taken out of the jungle and placed in the middle of a small town America. That's ridiculous. Or big town America for that matter. Right?
That's
So, I mean,
ugh. Ugh. I just feel dirty even listening to that.
so
Ugh.
I don't know about you. Like
Ugh.
when you think about Caribbean islands, do you think about the jungle or do you think about rainforests or something? Like I don't think
Honestly, I think about beaches.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Beaches.
Yeah.
What is it?
Beaches. You're right. You're right.
What the
I mean, there are, I guess, jungles. Like I'm sure there are jungles in Haiti, but like I just don't think of the people of Haiti as living in freaking jungles.
he's just ugh.
But
Ugh.
when I first saw the quote, I didn't know it was about Haiti. I assumed it was about Africa. You know, but it's all the same. It's black people.
Yeah.
He's
Ugh.
got no respect. They shouldn't have been brought here and put in small town America or big town America. They
It
shouldn't be here.
it's just amazing. The man has like it's like he has no self-awareness. I think he still thinks he's going to wiggle out of this somehow. And
Wiggle out of
why would
what?
you
He's
keep
got
and
nothing. He's got
why would you keep doing this? Why would he why it's like he's got the shovel and he can't stop digging the fucking hole. They should why didn't they by the way, why didn't they take his podcast equipment away? Isn't that worth something? Can't they take they should have taken that away too.
he's got nowhere to plug it in, Brendan.
That's right.
Is he going to go down to Starbucks?
But
Can't afford a Starbucks.
he still made time to appear with at a Trump rally recently, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, he went to the MSG thing, didn't he?
I think he did. He still
Yeah,
made time for that. He
yeah,
made time to go be like rah 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 for the guy who stiffed him out of $3 million, and and on whose behalf he's destitute.
yeah. You know what else he found time to do?
Well, tell me, please.
He found time to be in court on a Zoom call
Oh
to
yeah.
right. All right, so you're gonna laugh for like a half an hour, but yeah. So that woman who worked for him, who said that he turned her into a sex slave and he stole her wages.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that
That
is a
whole ugly case.
sick story. So they had to have a Zoom call for, they have these pretrial hearings, and he just kept ranting and stuff. And of course, this is a Zoom call, not a courtroom, but the judge told him, look, if you don't tone it down, like, I'm gonna mute you.
Yep.
Then he started like just like these conspiracy theories and just insulting the plaintiff. And so he did. He totally cut him off. He was like, I don't want to do this, but it's for your own good. You're just going to get yourself in trouble if I keep your mic on. So he cuts him off, and apparently now he's, how Zoom calls are. You got like four people on the screen or six or however many, and no one can hear him anymore. But he's just standing there like beat red, like screaming into the into the mic. People can't tell what he's saying for like a minute. And then finally, he just kind of realized it was all fruitless and pointless, and he just sat down all despondent.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's
I'm
hilarious.
seeing this. I'm seeing it in my mind's eye. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely seeing like I'm seeing his arms like waving and the sweat coming down, probably his hair dye leaking again. Oh.
He's thinking like, I gotta get, my few belongings I'm allowed to have out of my apartment. I only got a few hours, and here I am stuck on this Zoom call.
The movers are
Yeah.
coming. The movers are coming.
Yeah. I still got some clothes. Remember that scene in The Jerk when he's lost everything and he's like, I still got this chair.
Here.
That's Rudy right now, man. I picture him walking down the like Upper East Side or whatever it is with his chair, fucking suit and a bag over the shoulder, like podcast microphone under his arm.
wearing plastic bread bags for shoes.
Yeah, wishing he could hail a cab, but he ain't got no money for a
Money.
cab. Better
And it's
better
raining.
you better use that Metro card before it runs out of cash.
See, it's too bad. Well, it's too bad he doesn't live in Philly. He could ride the SEPTA for free. He's still got to pay up in New York.
He's gonna be hurdling the turnstiles like
Yeah, yeah, with his 85-year-old legs. Sure,
yeah,
sure, sure.
trip and fall.
I
Oh,
have no
it's
sympathy for him. He slagged our city too. He said bad things happen in Philly. Screw you, buddy. Sounds
oh
like
man,
worse things happen to you in New York.
there was one other thing that happened at that hearing, which was I guess they're also suing some other people, like the company that was his podcast was part of or something. And so they had their own lawyers there, and the judge was like, "Are these lawyers representing you?" And he's like, "I don't know. I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
sure. I think I'm representing myself." And he's like, "Well, why don't you guys figure it out?" And I think he gave him like an extra, couple weeks before the next hearing. So he told him, maybe you can figure out who your lawyer is by then.
This is it's just fascinating to watch. It's
Like, who's
fascinating.
going to represent the man? He
I
has
know.
nothing. He has no
He has
money to
nothing. He
nothing.
can't pay a retainer.
No.
Even if he got his money from Donald Trump, he couldn't pay the retainer.
Oh man.
He's screwed. He's screwed.
And that's just this is nothing. He's still got this case where he was essentially raping this woman and stealing her wages. He's got the case down in Georgia. There's a case in Arizona. Um, he could still get charged in the federal case.
Yeah.
So he is he's been taken down to the studs exactly like Trump should be.
Yep.
Exactly like it. It's kind of unfair, but that Trump's on the precipice of being elected president, and this guy is as far away from that as you can possibly imagine. But it's not unfair because it's exactly what Rudy deserves. It's
So yeah, speaking of being on the precipice, man, it's things are heating up and have been heating up in the past week or so. The last time we talked, we talked a little bit about the early vote and low propensity voters. But what we're seeing on the right, what I think we've both been seeing it on the right is the kind of building freak out over the early vote numbers, which are pretty high if my memory is correct.
There's very strong early vote participation. So yeah, that indicates there's a strong interest in the election. There's a lot of different things we could talk about with the early vote. But I think one of the things that's kind of funny right now, if you can find any humor in such a serious subject as the outcome of this election, um, is that a lot of women are voting early compared to men. Um, and that's actually, well, if you go back 4 years, that also happened where a lot more women voted than men. But there was kind of an obvious reason for that, which was that Trump had very much discouraged his own people from using vote by mail. And so there was like 4 times as many Democrats voting early in most states as Republicans.
I would
And
just
of
like to
course,
jump. I just want to interject real quick. Is that
yeah,
he's actually still doing that. There was an article just last week about how he was at an event meant to encourage early voting and mail-in voting, and he couldn't help himself. He went on a rant against it at a Republican event meant to encourage early voting. So I just wanted to say that he's still at it too. He still can't make up his mind about that. But
he,
continue.
he can't make up his mind, but but he has changed his tune overall, and the campaign has changed its tune overall. And you can see in places like Nevada where there's very heavy, um, surprising heavy early Republican participation. Um, that's partly because they have early voting centers. But anyway, to get back to the thing that I was talking about, the there's a lot more women voting. Last time it was kind of explainable by the fact that there's more women that are Democrats, and Democrats were voting overwhelmingly early, right? So you would expect that in that situation, you're going to have more women voting than men. But in this case, it's much more um, even in terms of Republicans and Democrats voting early. And yet the disparity is still the same between, there's still the same like percentages of women, more women voting than men.
I'm
So
looking at an I'm
that
looking at an
has,
article. Sorry, I was going to interject that I'm looking at a an article at Newsweek saying that yeah, the more than 58 million mail-in early in-person votes, 54% were cast by women, 44% by men. That's just wanted to jump in there with that number.
okay. People, those numbers are getting updated like every day.
Yeah, this is from
And
today.
okay. So I think it's kind of obvious. Here's one thing that you could look at. You know, pretty much half the people are women and half the people are men. Pretty much, you should expect the election to be the same way. So if more women vote than men and they heavily support Harris, then he will lose.
Mm-hmm.
If unless the men support Trump by more. And what we're seeing in these internals of these polls is that the spread is bigger. Uh, there's a more why am I having so much trouble putting this into words? The percentage of the percentage that Harris is winning women by is bigger than the percentage that Trump is winning men by. Okay, that's the simplest way
Yes.
of putting it. So in that case, like he should lose, right? Um, and especially if more women vote than men. So who knows if those numbers are right? Certainly, all the polling we're seeing in the critical states are like pretty much dead even, right? So you're not seeing any indication that Trump is definitely losing all these states or definitely winning any of them. But on the right, they're looking at these early votes and they're looking at the gender disparity and they're freaking out. They're absolutely freaking out.
They sure are.
Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of cast of characters that are, I think, making matters worse for Trump. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of these deplorable people in the Republican Party who are looking at these stats and they're freaking out. And
Good.
one of the things they're freaking out about, it's not just the stats, but there's a little effort going on among some Democrats and Democratic groups to reach out to women and say, hey, you may live with a Republican husband that's big into Trump, but you don't have to tell him how you're voting. Once you get in that ballot booth, you can do whatever you want. No one's going to know unless you tell your husband. He's not going to know. And so go ahead and vote for Harris. Don't tell your husband. And that has just triggered these folks.
Oh my God. It's gone over like an atom bomb.
They're just panicked about it.
They're running around. They're running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Totally, to use one of the words that they would probably use for women, they're hysterical. I'm not sure which, I mean, my favorite one so far, to the extent that I have any favorite one, is Charlie Kirk, who's absolutely losing it over this. He was on
Well,
Fox.
who's Charlie Kirk? We got to
yeah.
establish who
So
Charlie
let's
Kirk is.
establish who Charlie. For those of you fortunate enough not to know who Charlie Kirk is, he's the founder and main spokesperson for this group, Turning Point USA.
Yeah.
Which is always doing outreach to college students. They want to try to recruit college students into their movement. They've been widely
into their cult.
Thank you.
Yes.
And they've been widely ridiculed. There's one event they did where they were trying to taunt the left for being a bunch of babies, and what they did was an event where they all wore diapers and sat in a playpen. That kind of should give you an idea of how smart these fellas are.
Yeah.
Charlie is frequently a target on Reddit for parodies. He has an enormous giant head and a tiny, tiny little face that just spouts pure bile all the time.
He's got a lot of money and a lot of influence, though.
He does. He absolutely does. And so here is Charlie on talking with Megyn Kelly, no prize herself, on Fox. Pardon me, with former Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly, who is too awful for Fox, so they kicked her off. It is so repulsive. It's so disastrous. It's the embodiment of the downfall of the American family. I think it's so gross. I think it's just so nauseating, he said, because he was so mad that women might vote their own conscience. He was just losing his shit.
He was responding to Julia Roberts.
Yeah, totally.
Who was doing this, working for this Christian organization, a liberal Christian organization. And what I was talking about, like telling women it's okay to vote, the other way from your husband and not tell them about it. And so it's so repulsive.
It's so repulsive.
It's disastrous.
Speaking of repulsive disasters, the Mike Cernovich, the Pizzagate guy, also had a few things to say. You may remember Cernovich from early in the Trump years. He was the QAnon guy, QAnon supporter, promoter, who was promoting Pizzagate. He was promoting this whole thing called Pizzagate, which proposed that a conspiracy theory which proposed that Comet Pinball and Pizza, Comet Pizza in DC was running a child sex trafficking ring out of their non-existent basement, and that Hillary Clinton, among others, was involved in this. And someone showed up with an AR, 15 or whatever it is,
some kind of semi-automatic rifle.
Yeah, and to save the children. And I don't know if shots were fired, but I do know that
no shots were fired.
But he did force the pizza owner was forced to like demonstrate to the gentleman that no such they didn't have a basement. And so, but Mike Cernovich is one of these guys who promoted that big time. He's also tied to Laura Loomer, at least he used to be. And but anyway, he's totally going nuts. Male turnout in Pennsylvania for Trump has been a disaster. That's what he said on social media. So I'm assuming X. Unless this changes, Kamala Harris takes PA and it's over. So
Yeah.
he's losing it.
Yeah. And that's kind of, yeah, the Pennsylvania numbers that got him spooked.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the one who's done real damage, I think, in the last days of the campaign here is the Jesse Waters guy from Fox, um, because he just any woman who hears what he has to say about this is just not going to be more inclined to support Trump.
No, not at all.
Not at all. No, I mean it's incredible.
You want to read the quote?
I do we have the whole quote?
Let
Because
me let me
what
see if I.
I got a part of it.
Here we go. Here's the quote. If I found out Emma, his wife, was going to the voting booth and pulling the lever for Harris, that's the same thing as having an affair. That violates the sanctity of our marriage. What else is she keeping from me? What else is she lying about? Why would she do that and vote Harris? Why would she say she was voting? If I caught her and she said I lied to you for the last 4 years, it's over, Emma. That would be D-Day.
Yeah, D-Day. D-Day known for its violence.
Yes. Yes, seriously.
Like normally you don't call the end of your marriage D-Day.
D-Day.
D-Day. He's gonna storm her beach.
with an assault rifle.
Yeah. Beat the shit out of her is what he means.
Yeah, that's of course what he means. What
Yeah.
an awful human being.
Oh, yeah.
And
So yeah, you got Charlie Kirk saying that it's like the downfall of civilization that women vote differently than their husbands, that it's disastrous. And this guy saying it would be D-Day and then he'd end his marriage over it. And that, and this idea that women don't have the agency and the freedom to vote how they want to. I mean, I think if there's one real thing I'm certain about in this election is there's just a ton of women who feel like they they're losing their position in our society, that they're being, you know,
yeah,
pushed back. And
yep, they are being.
that's why Harris's theme is we won't go back.
Yep,
Right? We're not going back.
and that's why Trump's theme of take back America is so disturbing to a lot of people because what do you mean by take back?
Yeah.
Where to take back to when?
Yeah.
You know,
Before Roe v. Wade, obviously.
obviously, and heck,
That's
if they
already
had,
accomplished.
and they some of these people you figure they'd want to go back to 1850.
Well, and they want to go back before they changed the immigration laws in the 60s, right? And they want to go back and deport all the people that have come since. So
Yep.
they can go back to their jungles.
That's what's been so what's so weird about the freak out over women is it seems that there's been like in general there's been like at least lately it's almost seemed like the Trump campaign has been a bit overconfident if anything. And you were talking about this earlier this week when we were chatting.
Well, they're trying to project that for sure, but I think it's actually real. And we saw this before. Like, remember when Mitt Romney was, but like all reports, was generally shocked that he lost and he hadn't even written a concession speech.
Yes,
And
I
he
do
had to,
remember that.
like, do that on the fly. And what was so weird about that was that there was just like no evidence that he was going to win. None. And there wasn't really even any suspense in that election. I mean, unless the polls have been just shockingly off, and they weren't, right?
Right, they weren't.
And somehow he was genuinely shocked. And that's because they had convinced themselves that there was some kind of like systemic error in the polling or something. I don't know how much they're their confidence right now is fake, and you know, they want to look confident, they want to look like a winning campaign, they want to, you know, and that's how they want to finish. And I think that that's smart, but it's like how much of it is real and how much of it's not real, because Trump here is down to the last days, and we're looking at, you go down the list, you know, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona. These swing states are all polling like within the margin of error. And he's doing a thing in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and another thing in Virginia. And when you ask them about it, they're like, look, we're killing it. We're going to win all the swing states. We want to roll up the margins. We think we got a chance in Virginia and New Mexico. We wouldn't be going there if we didn't think that. And we might even go to New Hampshire because we think maybe we can pull New Hampshire off, but we're not sure if we're going to go there yet. That's what they're saying right now to NBC News and probably other reporters. That's where I read it. It's an article on NBC News. And that's just not backed up by the polling that we're seeing. And we know the polls are inaccurate, but if they're believing that they're like private polling is awesome and more accurate, and they're, you know, if they actually believe this stuff, well, maybe they're right, but we saw this happen with Mitt Romney where they were wrong.
Yep. And it could be the
uh
kind of overconfidence that led them to choose JD Vance. Remember that? When they thought
yeah,
JD Vance was all about rolling up the margins, we got this in the bag,
yeah,
and then they wound up with a real fight on their hands. So who
yeah,
knows? Who
but
knows?
I'm not seeing him ahead in any of the battleground states. Most of them he's not ahead. He's either tied or he's behind by a couple of points. A couple of them he's ahead a couple of points. It's tied. There's no evidence, and even the outlier polls, like they're still tight.
Yep.
So there's no real evidence for that. But this whole idea that he's going to win, I think, uh, they want to project that. It's very important that they project that because they have a plan for if they don't win, which
You wrote.
involves this election wasn't legit, right? It
Yep.
wasn't counted right. Um,
You wrote about this at the blog Progress Pond, and
yeah,
I was hoping you would bring this up because I need to hear more about this, and I think our listeners would appreciate it as well.
sure. Well, I had one theory. There's more than one theory. We know for what we know for sure is that if he loses, right, they're not going to concede. There's zero chance of that. Um, they they have convinced themselves maybe, but they've definitely convinced their movement that they are on a glide path to victory, that they're gonna like they might even roll up the score. And if they win, they were right. If they lose, this is setting them up for saying this wasn't an honest result, right? There's no way we could have lost when every indicator said we were going to crush it. And they want their audience to feel that, to feel like that. How did we lose? Like, how is this possible? Like, everything looked great. So, the reason that that's important if they're going to contest an election that they lost is because they need to have their own people behind them, and they need to have those people pressuring the Republicans in Congress so that they're afraid to speak out and be like, just concede. You understand?
Yeah. Oh, I do.
So that's the starting point. Um, that there's a variety of ways that they can contest the election if they lose, but one thing that's key is last time he was in the White House,
Hmm.
and you know, possession is what 9/10 of the law, right? Getting him out of there if he didn't want to leave was going to be complicated. You know, what do you do? Do you have the military show up and put a
Yeah.
gun on him? You know, we were wondering about that at one point. You know,
Yeah.
like,
I was hoping
uh,
he would be dragged out kicking and screaming.
well, we
You know.
wondered if he would leave, right? Like,
Yeah. I know.
yeah, um, but he did. on January 20th. Took Air Force One down to Florida so Biden wouldn't have it.
What an asshole.
Oh yeah. Um, but yeah, so now it's a little more complicated because he's not in the White House and he needs to find a way to get back in the White House. And what really drove me to start thinking about this piece was something he said at the Madison Square Garden rally, their little hate filled Nazi rally that they had there. And everyone was focused on mostly on what the comedian said about Puerto Rico being a garbage dump. And that has been the main story. But a secondary story was that he shouted out Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, and he said, I don't have the quote in front of me, but Mike Johnson and I have a little secret,
He sure did.
and the secret means that we're going to do very, very well in the House. And people weren't really sure what he was referring to in that, but suspicions were raised, and that if you just listen to that, you might think, oh, Trump really cares about winning the House of Representatives, and they've got some secret plan they can't tell anybody about until after the election about how they won the House. That just doesn't make a ton of sense. First of all, Trump is way too focused on himself to be talking about something that really is about the House. But secondly, what does he need Mike Johnson for? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to think about what could be in this plan. And I guess we have to do a little bit of constitutional explanation here. So the Electoral College, they have their votes. You need 270 votes to win out of 538 that are cast. If you have 269 to 269 tie, then you go to the House of Representatives and they decide who the winner of the election is. You know this, right, Brendan?
Yes, of course.
Well, I don't know if everyone understands it because it's a little, it hasn't happened in a long time,
Yeah,
um, if no one gets a majority of the votes,
it goes to the
is
House.
really how the House of Representatives chooses the president and the Senate chooses the vice president.
Yep.
Um,
I learned
s-
about that in civics.
yeah, so a lot of people are suggesting that they'll try to do something, have states not certify the election, not send their electoral college votes to Washington, and somehow prevent Harris from getting a majority. And I think Tom Nichols in The Nation wrote a piece on this. I focused on a slightly different idea, which the key to my idea is that Trump needs to get himself physically into the White House. And there's only really one way he can do that if he loses the election.
So yeah, he's got to get himself physically into the White House.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like a huge challenge. Like he can try all these kind of shenanigans, but Biden's there, he's not.
Yeah.
Harris is there, he's not. So
Yep.
it's a bigger challenge. So I started to think about it, and you get to another constitutional thing, which is the line of succession. So, if the president dies, the vice president becomes president.
And
If
if the
the
vice
if they
president dies,
if they
then it's
both die, then the speaker of the house becomes president.
Al
Okay,
Haig be
so
damned.
yes, exactly. Exactly. For those of you who remember the Reagan assassination attempt. But
So anyway,
yeah, so anyway, right now Mike Johnson's the speaker of the house. So if Biden and Harris, I don't know, died simultaneously, he would become president.
yes.
Constitutionally, totally legit, nothing conspiratorial about it.
Yep.
That's how
Conspiratorial.
yeah, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for, and okay, so let's go back to, do you remember 2023 when Kevin McCarthy wanted to become Speaker of the House and it took him like, I don't know, a dozen votes or something?
I thought it was more like a million votes, but yes, I remember that very well. It was hilarious.
Yeah. And then he lasted until December, or I'm sorry, September. And then they did essentially a vote of no confidence, and they threw him
Boom.
out.
Yep.
And then they couldn't settle on a new speaker for weeks. I
Yeah.
forget what it was. It was a while. And they finally settled on Mike Johnson. And so he is the speaker, but he has done all the same things that Kevin McCarthy did that got him booted. And Trump kind of stepped in and said, it's an election year. Don't boot Mike Johnson. It's disruptive. Just keep him in place. So what's going to happen is when they go to elect a new speaker in January, if the Republicans hold the House, that would presumably be Mike Johnson again, right?
Yep.
But he might have a terrible time getting elected to the speakership for the same reasons that McCarthy had a terrible time and he had a terrible time before. And I don't think he could probably win it unless they had a very, very strong election. They had a big majority, which is not being projected.
Yeah.
So, anyway, what's going to happen is on January 3rd, they're going to swear in all the new members of the House, 435 new members of the House.
Yep.
And then their first order of business is to elect a speaker. And it's very unlikely if the Republicans have won the election that they'll be able to elect a speaker.
Yeah, because they can't govern. They can't govern.
They can't find a majority.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
can't find they can't find a majority to get an order from freaking McDonald's the way these people act. I mean, we've seen it for the past however many years. They're just insane.
yeah.
You know.
So without going into all of that, my theory though doesn't require them to have any kind of problem with that. My theory is simply that the agreement with Mike Johnson is that they won't even seriously try to elect a speaker.
So,
They'll pretend it, they'll
so
have
they'll
a
just
little.
they'll leave the job open.
Yeah, and I
Yep.
don't think they could fill it if they wanted to in this scenario, but they're not even gonna try because the idea is to leave this speakership vacant. Okay.
And why is that? I know why
Because
that is, but I want to hear you. Hey,
they want Trump to be the Speaker of the House.
yep. And what is one of those little quirks of the House? You don't have
That
to.
you don't have to be a member to be the Speaker.
Yep. You or I could be
And
speaker.
you or I could be Speaker because we're U.S. citizens.
Yep.
So we could be Speaker, and so could Donald Trump.
So the idea would be to have no speaker.
To
And how do
have
we get?
no Speaker.
Yep.
That's
And
the
then
first
someone.
step.
That's first step.
First step. Then, so that's January 3rd, and then January 4th, January 5th. They're pretending that they're trying to elect a speaker, but they can't do it. Then they get to January 6th, and this is it's always January 6th. So this is the date when all the electoral college envelopes, there's a joint session of Congress, the Senate and the House meet together in the House of Representatives, which will have no leader, by the way, in this scenario. They'll meet in the House of Representatives, and they will open the envelopes from all the states, Arizona, and they'll say X amount of electoral votes for whoever won that state. And they'll go down the list and they'll read them all out, and then they'll count them up. And then if someone got 270, they're the winner. And then, then you just wait 2 weeks to the 20th for Inauguration Day, right?
Yep.
That's just how it's supposed to work. So, in order for Trump to get back into the White House, he cannot have this January 6th thing happen. Last time he sent an angry mob to try to have it happen. This time he'll have to come up with something more creative because he's not sitting in the White House anymore. So what he'll do in my hypothetical situation, in my imagination.
Yeah.
But what he'll do is
This is so disturbing, by the way. When I read this, it gave me chills up my back.
yeah, well, what I was trying to do was come up with a scenario that could work in theory, right?
Yep.
Because if he's got a secret plan with Mike Johnson that no one can know about, that's going to, and here's one other thing. I have to do a little aside before we get to January 6th, which was they asked Mike Johnson about this. And he said, secrets are meant to stay secret, and I'm not going to tell my secret about Trump. And they said, you guys didn't care about Russia being a phony investigation, and you guys didn't care about Hunter Biden's laptop and stuff because it didn't help the Democrat. Well, now that something will help Trump, now you care.
Yeah.
So he kind of admitted that whatever this thing was that they were talking about, that Trump was referring to, this secret plan, that it was designed to help Trump, right? Not to like help Johnson stay Speaker of the House by winning the House, but to help Trump. And so that's why I started thinking, okay, what can Mike Johnson do? And what can they cook up together that would help Trump win even if he loses? That's the idea. That's the whole thought
Yep.
experiment.
Yep.
So in this case, they have no speaker. They get to January 6th with no speaker. They don't have a speaker, but they do have a majority, right? In this
Yeah,
scenario, that
because in this scenario, they won the
they
House
won the
or held.
House.
Yeah, they won the House.
Yeah. So with a majority, they can at least pretend to have meaningful votes, um, right? And the joint session should just happen, right? Like they all arrive and they go into the house and they start it, and the person who's supposed to preside over it is the vice president, which in this case, unfortunately, I guess, would be Kamala Harris, who would be looking to get certified as the winner, and she's
Yes.
presiding over it, which maybe doesn't look like the most objective thing, right? Um, but that works to the Republicans' advantage because they're saying we're being railroaded. This election wasn't legitimate. We were way ahead in the polls. The machines must have done something. Blah blah blah. We got to fight all these things out in the court. This is not right. Whatever.
Yeah.
You know how they are.
We know how they are.
They're going to just argue this is not this is a stolen election. We can't have this.
They're going to be doing this for the rest of our lives, by the way.
Yeah.
Every
So
freaking election they don't win, they're going to insist it was stolen. It's just going to be their go-to maneuver from now on. It's going to be so fucking annoying.
so the real key
But
here,
anyway, yes.
the real key here is they can't really allow this joint session to happen, right?
So how do
Um,
they disrupt it this time?
well, it's complicated because the one advantage that they have two advantages. It's held in their building. It's held in the House part of the Capitol, not in the Senate. Right? It's too small, so it's held in the House, and they have the majority in this situation, so they can have any kind of vote and win if they're united, right? So
Okay.
just say um, we can't have the joint session until we pick a speaker, and let's vote on it. Yep, you can't do that. So we're not going to have the joint session until we pick a speaker, and then we'll just start like having endless votes for speakers. All they have to do is kill 2 weeks, which they've done before, trying to pick speakers. I think twice. And then on January 20th at noon, there is under the Constitution no longer a president or a vice president. Uh,
That's
they don't get to
that is
stay
just totally
there.
wild. That's
They
just
don't get to
totally
stay
wild.
there just like from the sake of continuity or whatever. They're no longer in power at noon, regardless, right? So their terms are expired. And if no one has been certified as the replacement, it's vacant, which means that now they can go and say, well, we don't have a Speaker of the House, and we don't have a president, and we don't have a vice president. Then it would go to like the fourth person in succession or whatever, right? But they just go, nope, let's make Trump the speaker right now, immediately. And then he immediately assumes the presidency.
Presidency.
And then then he gets to go right away, walk up and enter the White House. And it's constitutional. It is the line of succession. There is no president, there's no vice president. There is now a House Speaker of the House, and they are now properly, constitutionally allowed to take the presidency. And then they can say, do something about it.
Yeah.
And then they can say, well, that other election, I mean, it was to pick the successor to uh, Biden, but deadline passed for certification. The election was contested. We couldn't agree that it was legit. And so fuck you.
Ugh.
And I just want to say,
Dude, I already have trouble sleeping as it is. This is going to give me freaking nightmares tonight. Holy moly.
uh, now let me tell you why I don't think it'll work.
Yes, please, please.
I don't think that they can hold their own caucus together to do this kind of just egregious coup. Um, and I think they might run into some problems. Um, they'd have to be very aggressive to keep the joint session from actually taking place in their absence. Like if they, you know, to try to like exercise the majority without a speaker, with a narrow majority,
Mm-hmm.
um, where it's just, I don't think that they could do it, but it doesn't mean that they wouldn't try. And this is one of the things I read about in my piece, which was people need to remember. Here's the thing that people forget about January 6th, or they don't ever think about January 6th, is what if Pence had done it?
Oh, I know.
What if he had done what he was supposed to do?
What if he had gone along with that?
What would Brendan? How do you think that would have looked that day?
Oh, it would have been brutal. It would have been nuts.
I mean,
It
so the
just,
first thing that would have happened is they would have certified Trump as the winner of the election
yep.
when he clearly didn't
We,
win,
yep.
and then told everyone to do something about it.
Yep.
If you right, and people would have done something about
People
it,
would have absolutely done something about it.
and they knew that, and they were ready for that fight.
Yep.
They were thought they would win that fight.
Yep. They sure
If
did.
you don't think you can steal the election and keep it, you don't try. The only reason that didn't happen is because Pence didn't go along with the plan,
Yep.
right? So they will try anything, even if it will result in like immediate armed conflict and like cities burning and whatever else. They
Yeah.
don't
They,
care.
they do not care.
So if you think they do care, you're wrong. But there are, I'm not saying that's true of every member of the House and Republicans or the House or the Senate Republicans. That's not true about all of them. They're not all willing to do this. It's just why I think it's a harebrained scheme, right? And that's also why I think some of these other schemes are harebrained, like uh, trying to game out which prevent a majority of the envelopes being opened and other things. But I can guarantee you that Trump has some kind of plan in order to become president, even if he loses. And that the
No.
only way he can do that from the outside when he's not in the White House is to get into the White House. And the only way to get into the White House is to be speaker when the presidency, to be speaker at or immediately after noon on January 20th. And so that's why these other theories fail. And this one makes more sense to me. So, Brendan, I know you won't make any predictions about who's going to win the election because you don't want to jinx anything, but do you feel a little worse or a little better than you did, say, 2 weeks ago?
I'm going back and forth, to be honest. As you know, I'm a regular reader over at Political Wire, and every day, multiple times a day, now that we're getting into the home stretch, they're posting polls, and the polls are seesawing. Everything's tied up or very close. You had a great piece a couple weeks ago about adding pixie dust to the polls, which we talked about in the last episode.
Yep.
So
Pixie dust for Trump.
like
Yeah.
I yeah, like I said, we had that interruption earlier today while we're recording. It was one of the, as I said, dozens of calls I'm getting every day to remind me to go out to vote. That makes me feel better. I've been going out canvassing every weekend, at least usually once a weekend. That's making me feel better. I live in a fairly conservative neighborhood for Philly. I saw a new Kamala Harris sign earlier today on someone's house that I hadn't seen before. So I don't know. I mean, I'm feeling better. I mean, I'm feeling psyched, but it's gonna be tight. It's gonna
I
be
had to
really
say,
tight.
I had to
Well, where
say,
it's a freak. For me at least, you read polls better than I do. Um,
I don't
that's
know
one of
about
the
that.
reasons I started reading Boom Man Tribune and begin with, is because you did your work on polls and numbers and predictions was always very good. But this the it's there's a lot going on, and it's very stressful. That's all.
It's super
No.
stressful. I think the stress of it is also why I can't make it's affecting my judgment. I'm going to be honest with you. I try to be very objective prognosticator, but the stakes are so high that you start you start thinking certain ways because emotionally you can't handle it, you
Yeah.
know. Um, and I will just say this, like whether it's been denial or it's been just I couldn't handle it otherwise. Pretty much since she got in the race up until first couple weeks of October, I was not that worried. I really felt very confident. And then about, I don't know, October 10th or something like that, everything turned for me. Everything
Yeah.
turned the exact opposite way. And I was like, fuck, we're going to lose this thing. I can't believe it.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I will just say that in the last few days, I'm back to feeling confident again. And I can't explain exactly why, but I just feel like I feel something. I feel like there's some movement. I feel like there's some momentum coming, and I feel like she's closing strong, and he's out there looking like a crossing guard fuck toy. I
Yeah.
don't know if we want to put that, but he's out there doing ridiculous stuff with his garbage truck and
Oh
his
my
and his
God. He looked like an Oompa Loompa. Oh my God, that picture.
yeah.
He really he looked exactly like a freaking Oompa Loompa. All you had to do is was dye the hair green. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's like Dukakis in the tank, that really damaged Dukakis. It's hard to explain why, but his little crossing guard jacket and his little stunt
it's
and
so
just
funny. He couldn't
I
even
don't,
get into the garbage truck.
yeah, he's like falling down. Did you see what Tim Walz was saying? He was like
Yeah.
almost killed himself trying to get into the truck.
And that
That was
the most
hilarious.
absurd thing about this is, like, just 2 days ago, 3 days ago, he has this stupid rally where they call Puerto Rico an island of garbage, and
Yeah.
now they're like trying to make this big deal that Biden was calling Trump supporters garbage, and it's like, well, no, first of all, you're taking things wildly out of context on purpose. Chris Saliza, that asshole, got in on the act on that. Remember that old hack? He
Oh
got in
yeah.
on the act of this, saying that the basically trying to claim you could hear the apostrophe. Lawyers, guns, and money trashed him for it. It was wonderful. But
Yeah, that's the difference
but
between supporters
but
and
the other
supporters with a apostrophe, which is one person.
yeah, but the other thing is that, like, Biden said garbage. It's like, dude, first of all, not only did Trump, you know, buddy over there call Puerto Rico an island of garbage. Just before that, Trump called America a garbage can. And number three, Joe Biden isn't running for president. So shut your pie hole.
And number
It's
four, Trump
ridiculous.
calls Democrats scum and things like that all the
All the
time.
time,
Yeah.
all the time. And it's like, you're gonna make a big deal out of this media. Go, blow it out your brown star,
So
you
then they
know?
get this idea that this is really going to help them get past the Puerto Rico thing
Yeah, yeah,
to
right.
all start embracing that they're garbage. And I think it's just a really bad finish.
It's so
It's
dumb.
just a really bad finish to this campaign.
Ugh.
And he's just stumbling to the end line here.
Yeah.
So I feel like he and Rudy are in the kind of same level of momentum right now.
Your mouth's a God's ear, man. I want that guy to go to jail. I want Trump in jail. Rudy gets the cardboard box because he's powerless at this point. But Trump, you want him behind bars.
Yes,
He's dangerous.
that is.
He's like a rabid dog, a cornered rabid. No, that's it. He's like a cornered rat,
Yep.
you know. He is a
And so
cornered
in
rat.
just a couple of days, we're going to find out whether we're the enemy within Brendan and whether we need to, get look
Get
over our shoulder or
get back into that commune in Portugal, or in my case, go teach abroad earlier than I'd expected to.
whatever it is.
Whatever it
Gonna
is,
have a
whatever it
fight
is,
on
it's
our we're
coming.
gonna have a fight on our hands.
Oh, we absolutely will. We're absolutely going to have a fight on our hands. So the next few days are just going to be completely, it's going to be a pressure cooker. It's a scary Halloween, man. Scary Halloween.
So hopefully we will know that Harris is the winner of this election, and she'll be declared that way before Thanksgiving.
Yes,
Because
agreed.
I remember in 2000 we were sitting around the Thanksgiving table arguing with Gore and Bush, and that still wasn't resolved. You know,
I had
I don't
completely
need that.
forgotten about that.
I don't need that.
I don't need that again either.
I need
No
a
way.
peaceful, happy Thanksgiving.
Me too. And
So
on
on
that
that note,
note, Jinx, owe me a Coke. On that
yes,
note, let's wrap it up for today. This has been episode 17 of the Progress Pondcast with Brendan Squire and Martin Longman. We'll see you next time. I guess we'll see you after the election with either good news or bad news. You can find us on the podcast platform of your choice: Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Amazon, Castbox. There's a few others that I'm forgetting. And as always, please, the best way to support us is on Patreon, patreon.com/Progress Pondcast. Don't forget the N in pond. You can subscribe for as little as $5 a month and help keep us afloat. We love you. We'd love it if you love us back. And as always, thanks to the Royal Hounds from Nashville, Tennessee for doing our intro and outro music, The Walk. Their new album. Well, it's not the new album so much anymore. They've got to have a new one coming out soon. Look them up on Apple Music and Spotify. They're great. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.
over and out.